It's the Security Weekly News, and it's episode 337. It's Friday the 27th of October 2023. We've got for you Pumpkin Spice, VMware, Winter Vivern, RoundCube, Apple, Big IP, Oktapus, Aaran Leyland, and more news on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. AI, accelerated cloud adoption, and hybrid work are fundamentally shifting how business gets done. The old way of securing your people, apps, and data doesn't work and scale anymore. To stay ahead, today's organizations need to reimagine their security and networking infrastructure with a cloud-first, unified SASE architecture. Join Palo Alto Networks and leading technologists from across the globe for SASE Converge 2023, a two-day virtual experience, November 15th and 16th. Revealing how SASE powered by advanced AI can drive better security and networking outcomes. Register today at securityweekly.com/Palo Alto.
Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from New Wave to Synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
All right, welcome to the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Today we got, VMware flagged a vulnerability, and they called it urgent. And I'm like, anytime they say urgent, you're like, uh-oh. Because usually they're like saying, but it's like urgent. This is a critical remote code execution flaw in vCenter Server and VMware Cloud Foundation products, and it, of course, can allow someone with network access to launch remote code, which, of course, means you can do just about anything. The vulnerability is an out-of-bounds write issue in the DCE RPC protocol, and it was scored as 9.8 on CVSS. Now, if you're not familiar, DCE RPC is a distributed computing environment remote procedure call approach. It's a kind of clustering tool, and that may be oversimplifying it, but it basically allows you to execute code which is running on a whole bunch of different machines, but it acts as if it's all on the same machine without having any networking component. Even though there are networking components, you just don't see them. So it's a way to do essentially distributed computing. But VMware has released patches for this, as well as they are now releasing patches for older end-of-life products. So if you have really old stuff, like, say, VMware vCenter 6, which is end-of-lifed, that's a big problem. But basically on their chart, it says any under the affected systems. So that means that it's really bad. And now if you're running under these modern systems, you can obviously initiate patching through the system, but if you're running these older versions, that's not necessarily true. Or if you have systems that are isolated or whatever, you may want to even then consider patching this, because if people can access your network, they can hit this up. So it's pretty bad. Tuesday was a big day for browsers as Mozilla released Firefox 119, which patched 11 vulnerabilities, including 3 high-severity ones. Chrome updated to patch 2 vulnerabilities, including a high-severity listing. So we just keep finding these things, right? In Mozilla, an insufficient activation delay bug would allow the user to unintentionally activate or dismiss the browser prompts and dialogues, which could allow clickjacking. So that means, stuff that's popping up that you don't even see popping up, that's getting clicked OK or yes, and you don't see that on the screen, which is really, really dangerous. There were also some memory safety issues which could have allowed execution of arbitrary code as well. The Chrome issue was a use after free issue in profiles, which had resulted in a $3,000 bug bounty. So use after free bugs in Chrome can allow somebody to break out of the sandbox mode by pointing to somewhere else in memory, and that would allow code that was pushed into the sandbox to then leak out in the main system and be executed and that's of course really, really dangerous. I mean, sort of basically like a browser from 15 years ago, but these nice sandbox browsers help to prevent that. But if it's got a problem, then guess what? Google did say that issue they had not seen being exploited in the wild, but if you're using Chrome or Firefox, I would say today would be a good day to patch. Or VMware. Winter Vivern, and that's how they spelled it. I thought at first it was Wyvern, like the mythical creature, but Winter Vivern, Vivern, used a 0-day in RoundCube webmail service to steal emails from European governments and think tanks. Now, Winter Vivern is aligned with Russia and Belarus, and of course Belarus is heavily aligned with Russia and so forth, and apparently the group's been around since about 2020. They have a history of spying on governments in Europe and Central Asia. The group's main focus has been on exploiting vulnerabilities in Zimbra, which, of course, is the basis for the RoundCube email servers. ESET was the ones that observed all this. They said these latest attacks, which exploited a cross-site scripting vulnerability on the 11th of October, was reported, and then RoundCube patched that bug 3 days later. The latest issue, which was also found by ESET, requires that the attacker send the victim a specially crafted email, which would allow the attacker to load arbitrary JavaScript code in the user's RoundCube context. There is no other contact required. Just you have to open the email. The email is designed to appear to be from Microsoft, and it has the address team.management@outlook.com. The subject field was "Get Started in Your Outlook" and was signed by the Microsoft Accounts team. The final payload in the attack chain was able to generate a list of folders and emails in your RoundCube account, and then exfiltrate the email messages up to the command and control server. So they're basically collecting intel. So if you're using RoundCube or Zimbra, I would say patch it like right now. And you might want to do some testing to see if you've been compromised or not. Google announced that it will expand the Vulnerability Rewards Program, which is called VRP, and this is, of course, the program which is used to pay out bug bounties by Google, and a lot of you are familiar with this and participate in it. This latest expansion will be for finding attack scenarios tailored to generative AI systems with the goal of improving AI safety and security. Okay, so good move there. Some of the categories they have include prompt injections, leakage of sensitive data from training data sets, model manipulation, adversarial perturbation attacks that trigger misclassification, and model theft. So they're basically, obviously, trying to insulate their AIs from both internal and external threats. Back in July, Google instituted an AI red team to address threats to AI as part of its secure AI framework. And Google has also announced that they're working to strengthen the AI supply chain via existing open source security initiatives such as supply chain levels for software artifacts and SigStore. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff and you like to go after AI stuff, which is a lot of people are very interested in now, Google is willing to pay you if you find anything. So fun time. We haven't heard from F5 in a while. I mean, there was a year where it seemed like every week, this was back, it was like the Move It stuff. It was just like a constant, oh no, not another F5 problem. But we hadn't heard from them in a while. But F5 has alerted customers that a critical security vulnerability that impacts big IP could result in unauthenticated remote code execution, which seems to be all the rage these days. Because who wouldn't want to have unauthenticated remote code execution capability? The issue is in the configuration utility component. It is rated 9.8 CVSS. The description of the vulnerability says that it may allow an unauthenticated attacker with network access to the big IP system through the management port and or self IP addresses to execute arbitrary system commands. So once again, this is, the same kind of problem. They said there was no data plane exposure, only the control plane, which in networking terms means that basically they can take control of your network device, but that doesn't mean they can actually do anything to your other, devices and so forth. There is a script that F5 is providing for mitigation if you have an old version or if you have a current version. And they really were making a very big fuss about it needs to be 14.1 or later. So they don't want you running that script on old versions that said it could cause serious problems. But they do have some temporary workarounds for older versions if you're pre-version 14.1. They were very adamant about that, so please don't use that script if you have an old version of Big IP. Praetorian was credited with the discovery of this vulnerability on the 4th of October, so they didn't release it right away. I guess they wanted to have patches available before. Praetorian also recommended that users restrict access to the traffic management user interface from the internet. Yes, I'm telling you, get these things off the internet, get them off your public network. I think I've been saying this every show now until the show should be called Don't, use a management VLAN weekly instead of security weekly news, but nevertheless, use a management VLAN. Do not expose these things or you will be sorry, because who knows what else is out there. Apple put out several patches on Wednesday, which includes one for all iPhone and iPads used before September of last year. So I presume this vulnerability was patched then. And when I was reading this story, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But then they basically said this vulnerability had been exploited. The flaw can allow execution of arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Wow, talk about bad. It can get worse, right? Execution of arbitrary code is bad. Kernel privileges is really bad. And this is the second time Apple has tried to patch this vulnerability. They had an update back in July that was also related to this same issue. Now, the patch this week fixes iOS 15.8 and iPad OS 15.8. So these are previous versions of this, which may well be running on your system, because when they switched over to that iOS 16, a lot of devices were not capable of running that. So this update is available for iPhone 6, 7, iPad Air 2, iPad Mini, iPod Touch. So if you have older Apple stuff, I would definitely look into this right away. Kaspersky researchers found this bug and they reported it to Apple, and they said it was one of 4 zero-day vulnerabilities they found while investigating an espionage campaign that was called Operation Triangulation. I think I'm going to start naming everything I do to give it like a cool operation name, like Operation Whipped Kibble is when I go clean up cat barf upstairs, or Operation Chowder Hammer. Well, that means I had too much to drink and will be out in the alley for a bit. That kind of stuff. I think that would be kind of a cool thing I could affect, right? I could adopt this. Well, Kaspersky released a tool called the Triangle Check tool, which automatically scans iOS device backups for indicators of compromise. And that's what made this all come clear to me. When they said device backups, that's why they were worried about this from previously. So I'm guessing they don't, if somebody restores an older backup from like last year, it could contain this problem. So they've got a tool to scan your backups to make sure you don't have this on there. They have promised that as soon as they can, they will release more details of this Operation Triangulation. There was a lot more about that in the article if you're interested in reading about it, but they have not given all the grim details of it yet, but they said they would in the near future. Well, the gang that attacked MGM and Caesar's Palace earlier this year is called a lot of different things. They have so many different names, it's amazing. They're called Oktapus with a K, a cyber attack collective, but this is also known as Scatter Swine, which is a group we've heard about and reported on before. Microsoft calls them Octotempest. The group apparently is an English-speaking adversary group, and it focuses on using adversary in the middle techniques. Social engineering with direct calls to targets and SIM swapping. So they have a whole collection of things they do. And they have in the past done cryptocurrency theft, data leak extortion, ransomware. They do a little bit of everything. It's your one-stop shop for bad guy stuff. Microsoft says they are currently expanding their operations and said, quote, "We observed Octotempest leverage a diverse array of tactics to navigate complex hybrid environments, exfiltrate sensitive data, and encrypt data." Microsoft warned that the goal of recent tactics using Azure Data Factory appear to be the goal is then data exfiltration via attacker-controlled secure file transfer protocol server. So that's SFTP, which hide amidst all your legitimate big data operation. Microsoft went on to caution that every organization probably needs to review and update their defense in-depth cyber defense plan, which, we would tell you anyway. I mean, I would tell you that anytime you ask me that you should always be updating your defense in-depth cyber defense plan. But they're saying that you need, and it's easy to say this stuff, right? They said, you update your plan using the best combination of policies, technical defenses, and education to mitigate the risk of further attacks. And I'm like, well, yeah, as opposed to using the not best approach. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I get what they're saying, but I always hate it when they're like, use the best approach. I'm like, as opposed to using the worst approach, which some people chose. But they went on to say that employees are going to need to be able to recognize all the various cyber attack methods and be taught how to recognize, mitigate, and report them. I mean, that's pretty scary stuff. I mean, you're basically saying we need to train our employees up to be the level of, an entry-level cybersecurity analyst just in order that they don't get hacked, which I don't disagree with. But boy, that's a lot of training and upkeep for your employees when you've got an accountant out there and you need to train them in all this stuff. So it gets worse all the time. Really scary just in time for Halloween. Well, he may not be a human fly, but he has 96 tears and 96 eyes, and it's Mr. Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Dr. Doug. The intros are getting shorter but more intense.
That's one of my favorite Cramp songs. So that's.
Everybody should write in who knows the Cramps are mega famous in America. I don't know who they are. Okay.
You don't know who the Cramps are?
I'm sorry.
Oh, they're a famous shockabilly band, is what they're called, and they were like it was sort of a punk band, but they played kind of like rockabilly type music, and they were really outrageous. They're involved in Fangoria magazine and all this kind of stuff. Super cool band from like the 80s.
I'll listen to it later.
You should check them out. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be more exciting.
Great shows. They have great shows. I don't know if they tour anymore, but they used to be really great to see live. So they were crazy.
Definitely more interesting than the news this week, which I find pretty. The news this week was so dull. Your Oktapus story is probably the most fun because weirdly it feels nice that Vegas gets hit, but then it's, you know what I mean. Okay, it's nice to beat the house. Right, this week's article, the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, CISA, and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, on Wednesday released cybersecurity resources for the healthcare and public health organizations, HPH. Difficult, always difficult to remember them. Okay, for me, this is a great thing, and the same way that most of us harness the power of NIST. I wanted to go all superhero there for some reason. This can be a great guardrail for organizations who do not have the finance to go higher end of cybersecurity scale. Okay, so CISA and HSS have jointly released a cybersecurity toolkit. Doesn't really matter who they are, other than CISA is pretty important in our cyber field, and the health one's pretty important in their field. Designed to bolster healthcare and public health organizations' cybersecurity measures. So it is known that healthcare entities heavily rely on digital technologies for storing sensitive data and patient care, making them attractive targets for cyber criminals, the bad guys. However, resource constraints, because as we know, not much money is put into healthcare, as it should, constraints often hinder their cybersecurity efforts. Okay, so I'm going to run through this really quickly, and then I'm going to give a bit of commentary at the end. So we're going to go facts and commentary. The key features of the toolkit are foundational cybersecurity. The toolkit provides guidance on fundamental cyber hygiene practices for both organizations and individuals. Threat landscape overview. It offers insights into the evolving threat landscape, enabling organizations to stay informed about emerging threats. Great thing. Best practices documentation. Detailed documentation of best practices helps organizations align with industry standards. Cybersecurity framework, also amazing to work with a framework. The toolkit includes a framework for the implementation of robust cybersecurity measures. Risk assessment. Healthcare organizations are equipped with risk assessment tools to evaluate their security posture, identify vulnerabilities, and prioritize improvements. Something I do as a day job if I currently had one. But as we know, everything should start with a risk assessment so that we know that we are aligned to business needs. And as we know, it's wrong to spend money on too much security and the converse of that where it's not needed. Okay, it also has recommended tools. The toolkit suggests utilizing recommended tools such as vulnerability scanning services and CISA's known exploit vulnerabilities catalog, also known as KFT as mates. Strengthening security, healthcare entities are guided on how to enhance their security stance, prevent ransomware attacks, and access free cybersecurity services and tools. This is a big thing about it, trying to do it not on the cheap, but low cost. Okay. Resource-constrained organizations. The toolkit recommends leveraging the State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, SLCGP. I don't actually know what that is. I don't live in America, but it sounds quite important. And if you work in healthcare, you should probably research that because it looks like you can get good bang for your buck. So, and low-cost services to address resource limitations, all good. And we all like open source as long as it's good. Expectations from technology providers. Healthcare organizations are informed about what to expect from technology providers to meet their cybersecurity needs. Okay, no silver bullets and snake oil. Buy something that is actually worth it to the price. This is cool. Proactive cybersecurity. CISA and HHS aim to empower healthcare and public health organizations to proactively assess vulnerabilities and implement effective solutions throughout this toolkit. So not just sitting back taking it, go forth and look for stuff, which is a good enhancement of maturity. So the release of CISA in collaboration with HHS, for me, marks a significant step in fortifying the defenses of the HPH, I can't even say it anymore, HPH organizations against the relentless onslaught of cyber threats. The toolkit comes as a much needed resource in the healthcare sector and other sectors, to be honest, which are grappling with the dual challenges of increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks and resource constraints. So as I've mentioned, you may be in healthcare, you may not be in healthcare, but you might be able to make use of this if you're in a low-cost sort of environment and nobody's throwing money at you. So in this commentary, we will delve into the key aspects of the toolkit and its implications for the HPH sector, providing insights for cybersecurity community. Healthcare organizations, as we know, have long been recognized as prime targets for cyber adversity. We see this every day in the news and often hear about it from Dr. Doug and myself. The treasure trove of sensitive data they harbour, including personally identifiable information, financial data, health records, and the proliferation of medical devices, presents an attractive opportunity for threat actors. The toolkit's release, in my opinion, may have come a bit late, but it is a good response to the changing dynamics of cyber attacks, which have only infested or intensifiedly infested over the years. Okay, so one of the most critical aspects of the toolkit is its focus on the resource constraints that many healthcare organizations face. It acknowledges the challenges these entities experience, particularly in light of the resource draining effects of COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, it offers practical guidance on how to optimize existing resources and gain access to free or low-cost cybersecurity services and tools. This approach recognizes the financial limitations that many HPH organizations face and provides a way forward for improved security. The toolkit emphasizes the importance of foundational cyber hygiene, advocating for robust cybersecurity practices from individuals to organizations. In an era where many cyber incidents result from basic lapses in security, not looking too far into recent attacks in Vegas, adherence to cyber hygiene is critical. The toolkit provides comprehensive overview of the threat landscape, helping organizations understand the evolving risks they face, and additionally, it documents basic practices, offering practical guidance aligned with industry standards. This can serve as a valuable resource for healthcare entities looking to align their cybersecurity measures with established benchmarks. It is crucial for healthcare sector to remain a step with these best practices challenges, given the evolving nature of cyber threats and how the criminals seem to be going after them all the time. A notable inclusion in the toolkit is a cybersecurity framework for implementation, and this provides a structured approach for organizations to strengthen their cybersecurity posture, guides them through the process of identifying vulnerabilities, assessing risks, and implementing defenses effectively. So by providing a systematic approach, the toolkit aids organizations in navigating the complexities of cybersecurity. So the toolkit is good. Go and have a look and look at the CSIS and the known exploit vulnerabilities, KEV catalog. This will all help you. You need to look at the interconnectivity of the healthcare sector, and this highlights the importance of collaboration. We talk about collaboration all the time, sharing information voluntary and staying informed. It's very important that as a collective silo that you share information so that other people knows what's going on and you're not sort of blind to what's going on. Okay, so in conclusion, the Cybersecurity Healthcare Toolkit released by the organizations is pretty good, overdue. It does bolster cybersecurity, healthcare, and public health organizations. It does address specific challenges. It recognizes constraints. This is all good. And the emphasis, as we said, cyber hygiene, best practices, structured implementation framework, and just underscores all of this. It asks for collaboration between organizations. I think this is very important, and we don't do enough of it. Whew. Okay, back to you in the studio, Dr. Doug, who, as I'm absolutely sure, is now a deep fake run by AI and no longer cares about the state of healthcare in the system in the US.
I can be Max Headroom, yeah. Thank you, Aaron. And finally, so Amazon said that Amazon Ads customers can now begin beta testing the deployment of AI-generated images for products on the sales platform. Yeah. So I guess that means you can basically show your product being held by faceless monstrosities, which vaguely look like the St. Pauli's girl if you took the wrong kind of expired LSD at the festival next week. You know, that kind of thing. You've seen those AI pictures. Of course, it was actually more subtle than that. I mean, that would have been fun, but it was actually more subtle. So basically what they're doing is they're allowing people to manipulate their images so they can change the sizes of them, modify them, and so on. But you can also set the context. So if you're selling a toaster, they've got context you can set to allow for backgrounds and things to take your toaster and put it in different context. You know, like sizzling happy family or ominous basement apartment with strange odor kind of thing. And they literally have a pumpkin spice option. So now that sex toy you're selling with the headline, "What Dad Really Wants for Christmas." And I'm not even making that up because I saw that. I literally saw that on Father's Day, and it's a holiday in the United States. It said something like, "Get Dad what he really wants for Father's Day." And I was like, what? And then I saw what it was, and I was like, oh dear. I mean, no kink shaming here, but I really don't want, you know what I'm getting at. But anyway, you can actually have stuff like that where it's surrounded by AI-generated gourds. No way that could be weird. But they say they're keeping it clean, and they've not added the ability to set up thirst traps or clickbaity kind of things like dive bar filled with vampire babes or orgy of the dead, for Halloween next week. You pervs. But it's actually a pretty good movie. But pretty soon, everything you see is going to look just the way you think it should look. Only now, I can see some good things with this, where it's like you could take a picture of your own home and say, what would this look like in my living room? So we've already seen some stuff like that coming out, where you say, I want to buy this sofa. What would it look like in my living room? And the AI could actually inject it there. But this is just for ads, so it's going to could be really strange. So it's like, what my Tinder photo looks like and what I really look like kind of thing. You might not get what you expected. I don't know. Anyway, that's the news. Thanks, Aaron. And we will see you next week on the Security Weekly News. Halloween week, too. So fun times. Yeah.